Thank you so much for the support and video suggestions. It's truly appreciated.
Sanbonani Dumelang, it's your girl Nthabi here again, back with the APC series. So if you're new to my channel, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, leave a comment for me if you have any personal requests or you would like to ask me a question with regards to what I need to cover in the next episode or what you did not understand in this video. So the comment section is open to anybody who has a question, and if you require personal assistance, my email is available in the comment section. So it is apcplug101@gmail.com. And if you have any personal requests, you can send me an email so that I'm able to interact with you one-on-one. However, it is advisable that whatever concern or maybe an issue or question that you might have, please leave it in the comment section, because chances are you are not the only person who has the same question, right? Your question can help the next person with whatever they are struggling with or anything that they need clarity on. So feel free to leave the comments in the comment section and I will just respond to you and try to bring clarity to the question that you might have. So stay tuned. So in this episode, we are covering the awkward gap between when you are done with your board course syllabus. What do you do, in that space when you're preparing for the APC? Because one of the questions that I had when I was a candidate was, how do you prepare for APC? Do you do past papers? Do you revise on technical embedded knowledge? Or how do you prepare? So I came up with a formula in a way that kind of worked for me and what helped me. So this episode is basically to cover that gap and also provide clarity on how can you equip yourself so that you are at that, C level at the end of December. So the first thing I would advise you to do is revise certain topics, in the disciplines, be it accounting, finance, auditing, taxation, right? Whatever you might have forgotten. But because we do not know what is actively triggered, in the pre-release, we don't know what SAICA is going to take out. I suggest that you only focus on the big topics that you might have forgotten or you're uncomfortable with. Because at the end of the day, the 5 days is only enough to do research on the specific triggers. It's never enough to go back, to embedded knowledge, to ask yourself, and now what does deferred tax even say, right? Because you know that when accounting is triggered, we need to take deferred tax into consideration because it is a balance between accounting and taxation. So if it's multidisciplinary, we need to take it into consideration. So imagine now you forgot what IAS 12 is saying, and now you're pre-release and you are trying to figure out, what does the CTA note say? What did I do in ITC? It's going to be a mess because in the 5 days, we hardly have time to go back to our study notes. So rather do it now when you have the time, when you can still refresh your memory, because guys, honestly speaking, you did CTA a while back, and to remember the standards, it's going to be a mission. So just do yourself that favor. But one thing I realized is that the big topics in accounting, example, your IFRS 15, somewhere, somehow, it is always sliding into pre-release, right? But one thing I noticed is that, one of the mentors that I had, they told me that with regards to the testing, they will not take out the full standard because we won't have enough time to just cover everything, right? So then they'll maybe take out a specific section in that standard. For example, if it's IFRS 15, it's going to be, let's say, vouchers, right? Or maybe they just specifically triggering the 5-step. They will not trigger the whole standard because we won't have time to basically go through everything. So what can help you is just refresh your memory on what the standard is saying, but keep it basic, right? Keep it at what is initial recognition, initial measurement, subsequent measurement, presentation and disclosure of the specific section. So as I was practicing past papers, I realized that, like I said, IFRS 15 has a way of sneaking its way, into the paper, as well as IFRS 16. And my weakness in accounting was IFRS 16 because, So I made sure that, listen, remind yourself of what IFRS 16 is saying from a lessee's perspective as well as a lessor's perspective, because the accounting treatment is different. I'm not saying go in 7 days and cram IFRS 16. No, remind yourself of the basic principles. Like you see, I mentioned initial recognition, subsequent, presentation and disclosure. That is it. You don't have to cover anything else because we don't know what's going to be explicitly triggered. And the one thing I also reminded myself of is IFRS 9 hedging. I didn't do that in CTA, but somehow it was scoped in one of the tests that we were writing. And it was very challenging because at the same time, in CTA, it was scoped out. In ITC, we didn't do it. So now all of a sudden it's scoped in. How will I get the time? Where will I get the time to even remind myself of something that I wasn't even taught? So something like that, just, research how IFRS 9, the hedging, is treated. Research the accounting treatment of it. Maybe watch a short video on YouTube to remind yourself, just to see how it's done, just in case there is a hedging question that just sneaks its way in. And yeah, you should be fine with regards to accounting, because I think the other topics is something that you can just remind yourself as they are explicitly triggered in the pre-release information. But then remember I said I had 3 files, right? And one of the files was past papers as well as my attempts, and then the other files was just an accumulation of templates and all of that. So what can help you in the accounting section for the extra file that you have, not your ABC file, but the extra file that you have, is have that template of initial recognition, initial measurements, subsequent measurements, and presentation and disclosure. Don't have anything underneath it. Just have those headings so that you know that if they're speaking about accounting treatment, you have to go according to that structure. That is just a structure to remind you what you need to cover when they say accounting treatment, so that when you're getting to pre-release, you're not feeling overwhelmed. You're not asking yourself, Kana, what is the step for accounting? It's already in your file. So that is just to help you and remind you on how to tackle an accounting treatment question. Then with regards to auditing, we are privileged that if you're working in the audit field, you are doing auditing every single day. However, we are not auditing the same components. So sometimes it can be very difficult if they're asking you for the business process of purchases and payables, right? Whereas you haven't tested it throughout your training contract. What can help you is going back to your ISAs and going back to the audit process, right? From planning until, execution, right? So what can help you with regards to that is just reminding you what is the audit process, right? So that you are able to answer and know what they are asking you with regards to an auditing trigger. For example, you need to remind yourself of all the assertions, but in your file, that extra file that I spoke about, have the list of assertions for classes of transactions, have the list of assertions for the account balances, but in the same breath, have the risks associated with that. So for example, you will name the assertions, your completeness, your cutoff, existence, and then have how these assertions can have a risk, so that when the information is triggered in the pre-release information, you are able to just look at the file and say, okay, these are the assertions that are affected and this is the risk. So that when you get the document and they're asking for an auditing perspective, you already have it in the file. You're not using your memory bank, because sometimes it's a bit rusty. You already have it in the file and you are able to just copy paste and relate it to the case study. So having those assertions is very important. And for people who are not even auditing IFRS, don't feel discouraged, right? Because I, for one, was not exposed to an IFRS client when I was doing the APC board exam. However, it helped me to remind myself of the audit process and how to actually test an IFRS component. So that's why I'm saying go back to basics, go back to your assertions, go back to the risks. And another thing that can help you is looking at how you audit journals. So a page that you can have in your audit section with regards to templates is just looking at, for journal entries, what do you look for? You're gonna look for the journals that are processed after hours, the journals that are processed on holidays, the journals that are processed close to year end, your lot sum journals. So what I can advise with that is look at your CTA notes, but also look at how a competent response looks like with regards to audit testing. So what I like to do is go through the past papers on the SAICA website and look for questions specifically testing journal entries. So I would look at what an HC answer looks like, what a competent answer looks like, and I will print out that pre-release, print out the IOD and the specimen response, and just put it in my file, not the APC file, but just the backup template file, so that I know that if journals are tested, this is how I'm supposed to respond. And this is what was triggered in pre-release, this is how it pulled through in IOD, and this is what is expected of me. So that you can just have a basic understanding of journal testing. And another thing that can help you in auditing is having general procedures in your file, right? The one thing that really, really, really helped me with auditing, because auditing has always been, it was my weakest module, even in CTA. So it's reminding myself of the general procedures. It can be your general procedures for testing each assertion, right? So what can help you is having a template of procedures for accuracy, procedures for completeness, procedures for existence, right? We are not predicting what they're going to ask us in the exam, but it's preparing for it, so that in your file, the extra file, in your file, if the pre-release is speaking about existence and completeness, you already have general procedures, so that when it is triggered, you personalize those procedures according to your entity, according to what is going on in that specific component and what is actually triggered. Because if you have a basic understanding of the general procedures, you are able to add meat, so that you are able to be at that competent level when you are applying it to the case study. So yeah, what helped me is the general procedures, and also procedures for your opening balances, procedures for PPE, those things, right? But don't go in depth. But when you're having procedures, remember, you need to have procedures that address the risks, and also have procedures where you know which documents you are pulling your information from. So you need to have, let's say you have a template, right? A table will be sufficient. So the first column will be your assertions, your second column will be your risk, your third column will be the procedure, and the fourth column will be the documents that you need for corroboration. And as much as that seems like a lot of work that you have to do with regards to preparing for an auditing trigger, it really, really lessens the time, because you're going to be so stressed and overwhelmed by the information, the 5 days, you're not going to finish, you're meeting with your group. It's just going to be a lot. So having that basic thing in your file, your extra file, as a backup will really help you, because when you are in the 5 days, you even forget certain procedures because you're under pressure. So having that in your extra file just to remind you, okay, completeness, these are the documents that you need when you're testing this component or whatever. Like, have general procedures, right? But like I said, we are not predicting what they're going to ask because that's very dangerous. So I think what can just help you is having a list of the procedures. That's it. The meat you will add when you have explicit triggers in the pre-release. Then we look at finance. And with regards to finance, the first thing you'll look at, obviously, strategic considerations. And that was covered in the episode called Strategic Considerations that I recently uploaded. And it's something that you will have to practice, because you have to apply yourself to the case study. You have to apply yourself to the risks, and the opportunities that are stated with regards to that entity and industry. So yeah, everything is covered in that video. And then the second thing that you have to practice, I practiced and studied, I reminded myself of valuations, because there's so many methods of calculating the value of an entity or the value of just anything. So I had to remind myself, okay, I had a template of each valuation method, but I did not only have the calculation aspect of it, how to calculate it using that specific method. I had the reason why we use that specific method. So what can help you is just listing all the different valuation methods, but also stating the reason for using that valuation method. Because when you get to the exam, you need to apply a relevant method and back it up using the substance that you learned in CTA. So if you are using the free cash flow method, why are you using it? Right? You need to know why you're using it. You can't just say, okay, it's embedded knowledge. No, the manager does not know. The person you're responding to may not know, right? So having those reasons and having that structure is very important because like I said, in the 5 days, you really don't have time to remind yourself of such a big topic. So preparing for it would be beneficial. And then the second thing that I practiced was capital budgeting, right? Because in almost every case study I was practicing and I was doing, even on the board course, capital budgeting found its way to just sneak in there. So I had to remind myself how to actually do a capital budgeting question. And what helped me was in my file, the APC file now. Remember when I was speaking about templates? One of the cheat sheets that I had for finance was for valuations as well as capital budgeting. I had to remind myself how to actually do the calculations, how to calculate your NPV, using Excel, because we won't have time to use a financial calculator. Because when you are a professional, you don't use a financial calculator, you use Excel. So I had to remind myself, okay, on Excel, this is what I have to input. So that's very important to remind yourself that PMT is calculated in this way on Excel. The rate is calculated in this way on Excel. The NPV is calculated in this way. So I had to remind myself what goes into capital budgeting, what is ignored. And that really helped me because every single time it was triggered, I would take that template, look at the line items that I need to consider, look at the decision that I'm making, and apply it to that specific template. Because even in pre-release, you can do your own capital budgeting. Like if there is a question that's explicitly stated, for example, whether you need to outsource or insource a specific product, you already have the information. So you're going to prepare a capital budget for insource, you're going to prepare a capital budget for outsource, and you know what needs to be considered. For example, you can even guess the expenses, but as long as you have that set template to guide you. Because remember, in the 5 days, there is no time to remind yourself on how a capital budgeting template looks like. There is no time, guys. Because remember, you're meeting with your group. Ngapha, you must do your own thing. Ngapha is industry research. Hey, guning. So just avoid the commotion and have those set templates already in your file so that you just pull them through and make it relevant to that specific industry. And then one of the things that I kept or studied or went back to rather is WACC. I had to remind myself how to calculate WACC, and I used the formula. I created a full page of how to calculate WACC, be it your cost of debts, your cost of equity, and the whole weighted average, right? So that is very important because WACC can be asked in anything finance. So knowing or reminding yourself rather of how WACC is calculated will really go a long way and will save you the most time. Because right now, APC is about efficiency, what's saving you time, focusing your energy and your resources on the actual triggers. So yeah, just make sure that you are studying WACC and you just remind yourself just in case it pops up. Then we move on to taxation. And tax can be lengthy, right? But I think one thing that really helped me was going through the tax legislation, right? Because obviously, I flagged my tax legislation so much, I couldn't remember where the flags are, where the sections are, right? So one thing that really helped me was that I opened the table of content. You know, the page that we all ignore in the tax legislation. Yes, it has a table of content from section 1 until the annexures and the schedules there at the end, right? The one thing that really helped me was that I dedicated half a day to just the table of content and remembering each section and what it spoke about. So for example, obviously section 1 is your gross income, right? You know that section 1, and then you'll go to section 2, section 3 until the schedules at the end. But remember, I told you I'm a color person. So what helped me was that I would highlight the table of content according to the color of the flags I used. So in my tax legislation, everything that was income and included in gross income, I flagged it in green. Everything that was deducted as an expense, I put it as a blue flag. So I knew that when I saw my tax legislation, whatever is green is income, whatever is blue is a deduction. And then your schedules are going to be in different colors. Your VAT Act is going to be in orange or any other color. So whatever I flagged, the color that I used to flag, I would highlight the table of content using that. For example, section 1 is gross income, it's in green. I would highlight that in green. Section 11A is general deductions, it's blue. I would highlight that in blue because it matches the flag. So going through the table of content reminds you of the different sections that are in the tax legislation. Because honestly speaking, guys, the tax legislation is long and we don't have time to go through everything. So just remind yourself of the topics. If you want to revise it, with regards to taxation, I don't think it's advisable to predict what's going to come out because with taxation, you never really know. But if you want to remind yourself, then feel free to do that. Because at the end of the day, remember, we don't have time to revise it. But with regards to table of content, I suggest that. And while we are on the whole studying or reminding yourself of certain topics, what I will also suggest is that in your file, right? Remember, I spoke about 3 files, not your APC file. Your backup file that has, your information, your templates, your backup file. You can have a table of content on your own. So print out everything that is a finance topic, split it up into, your costing, and then split it up into your actual finance. And then for accounting, you will go from IAS 1 until your IFRS, right? And then for your taxation, the same thing, section 1 until your schedules. And then with auditing, from ISA 100 until all the way to the end. Having a list of all the topics will also help you when you're reading pre-release information, because you will say, oh, Kana, what ISA is this? What ISA is this? And you won't remember. Then you have to flag through the ISA. No, don't do that. Have that list of content, because at the end of the day, remember, in this period between us being done with the board course and preparing for APC, we are trying to make our lives easier so that we don't struggle when it comes to the exam. Our energy must be focused on the pre-release information, nothing else. So in us having the table of content is saying, okay, I remember that this is a specific standard that is being triggered, but I don't know the name of it. So that table of content will help you remember, okay, this is the ISA that I'm speaking about. You don't have to page through the whole book. It's just to help you be more efficient and save time. Then the second thing that really helped me was practicing past papers. But this is just a disclaimer. This is a personal feeling. It's not about the number of question papers you do. It's about the quality of preparation you do for that question, right? Because you can practice 15,000 questions, but you can still be at an LC. You can still be at a BC, because you're focusing more on the number of question papers you're doing rather than the quality of work you are putting in, right? So how I can assist is that what I suggest, you break it down, right? If research is your weakness, take one question paper and just focus on research. And when I say focus on research, you're going to focus on how to use the the websites I mentioned in the research episode. You will focus on the questions you need to ask the internet or that AI tool to give you the information that you want, right? So if you're using the AI tool and you want to do a accounting trigger, or you want to learn how to analyze the articles that are stated from the the other companies, then you are going to use that specific time and that specific period to perfect your research. So let's say you're using 2015 past paper or 2018 past paper, right? You're going to practice how to do industry research on that paper for 1 week. Then after that, you're going to practice how to research certain disciplines. Each discipline has specific questions you can ask the internet or you can research. But you will not know what questions to ask the internet if you do not practice. So that's why I'm saying break down the APC into chunks. The first week, you will practice how to research. If finance is what you need to focus on and you need to work on, just have set questions. What also helped me was that in the pre-release file, the extra file, the template file, I had specific general questions, not set questions. I had general questions that I would ask the internet based on that. So if it's accounting, I'd have set questions, right? If it's auditing, I'd have set questions. So for every discipline, I had just general questions on what to ask the internet, so that when I get the pre-release, I'm not trying to think, what can I ask the internet to help me? I already have that question bank to say, okay, this is what I'm asking for finance, this is what I'm asking for taxation. So when you are done with perfecting how to research specific triggers or do industry research, now you will focus on how to actually answer a question. Now you focus on your professional writing. And as much as you have 8 tasks or 9 tasks or 7 tasks that you have to do in a specific paper, I would suggest perfecting 4 questions. So in that past paper, do 4 questions and do them to the best of your ability under that time that you set for yourself, right? So remember, we discussed the time allocations in the exam. It's based on personal experience, because writing a paper under the record time that you have set for yourself is going to help you to keep time and to excel in time management. Time will no longer be an issue if you practice that. But the whole aim of professional writing, that phase, that period, is learning how to address the correct audience, learning how to write in the correct format. If they're asking for a letter, you can't respond in an email. If they're asking for a memo, you can't respond with a letter. You get me? So professional writing is just about that, but also the tone in the way you're responding. Because we are very quick to just say, wena, you did this, especially in an ethics question. We are very quick to say, you are wrong. You're not supposed to do this. No, it's not professional. So one thing that can assist you is practicing your tone. So with us practicing professional writing, it's just learning how to speak to our executives. It's learning how to speak to management. It's learning that with the CEO, the tone will not be the same as when you're speaking to the external auditor. It will not be the same when you're speaking to the financial director or any other manager, right? So it's perfecting that. That's why it's very important when you're done writing those 4 tasks, you look at the HC response. You look at the C response so that you can see the tone, so that we are at that competent level and we are practicing how to just be professional, right? Because one thing that I struggled with was professional writing. I was very quick to say, hey, you're wrong. And that was the incorrect response. My mentor had to call me to order, to say that, listen, you need to focus on how to write professionally and not attack the person, but attack the problem. And in doing that, in practicing, you are able to be at that C level or HC level. And that's why I broke down my weaknesses into research. We need to perfect research. And then when I'm done, I need to perfect how to answer. And, just marinate SAICA with my responses. And that is really what helped me with regards to preparing for the exam by using past papers. So it wasn't just about the number of past papers I did. So on top of the board course that I was on, I can say I only practiced one past paper, and I sat with that past paper, making sure that I perfect research and I perfect my responses. Because remember, I told you, it's not about the number of past papers you do. It's about the quality of work and effort you put in to make sure that you are ready for December. And then another point I can add with regards to practicing past papers is that you look at the specific questions that are being asked, right? I'm not saying gauge on what can come out or predict. No, I'm not saying that. But then if maybe identifying and assessing the risk of material misstatement is a weakness. For example, that was my weakness. I knew that there's a risk of material misstatement, but I did not know how to answer an assessment of that risk, right? I did not know what SAICA wanted from me. So I would look at the past papers to see, okay, this is what they want and this is how I'm supposed to answer. And one of the specific questions that I had wrote in the board course, it was from a past paper from SAICA, and they said that we need to identify and assess the risk of material misstatements. It had to deal with investment property, and when I saw the specimen response and I saw what I wrote, not the same thing. I was not even going that direction. So what can help you, ne? What helped me was looking at when they're asking for journal testing, when they're asking for assessment of a risk, what do they want from me? And then when you see the competent response, print it out and put it in your file so that you know that when it's journal testing, this is what you look out for. When it's an assessment of ROM, this is what you need to do. This is how you need to assess it, and also how to pull in the assertions that are relevant in that assessment of the risk, right? So yeah, that's what helped me, and I suggest that you do the same and just look at, maybe go back maybe 5 years from 2018 until 2023. Look at the questions, and then look at maybe if you can see if they're testing capital budgeting. What do they want from me? How do I answer it? If they're testing valuations, same thing. Just look at if maybe the specific topic is triggered, or ABC. If it's triggered, how do they answer it, and what do they expect from me? It's not about you cramming or trying to predict what is going to come out. It's you preparing yourself so that you know if journals are tested, this is what they expect of me. If the topic is tested, I have an example of the competent response. One more thing I forgot to mention was the reason why I was saying that you're gonna use 1 week to perfect your industry research, or any research, or 1.5 weeks, is because we are still employees, guys. So obviously during the day you are at work, you might not have time for that. So when you come back, you can dedicate 2 or 3 hours to just focus on research, or just focus on 2 hours and just try to perfect it. So that's why I made it so long for myself. And on weekends, I capitalize on that, because on Saturday, it's a full day for me, right? It's a full day to do APC. So that's what I did. But that's why I just said, you know what? I'm going to dedicate a week just to perfect industry research. And then the next week, if I need to perfect how to research each discipline, that is what I'm going to do. So whatever your schedule is, just make sure that you are spending time on the APC approach, even if it's 1 hour or 2 hours. It really goes a long way, because it's not about the number of hours you spend preparing, really. It's about the quality of work you do in those hours. So don't put too much pressure on yourself with regards to seeing other peers taking leave, or other peers flourishing and posting things that, okay, they are busy. No. Focus on your journey and focus on what you are doing. So yeah, don't put pressure on yourself, and just make sure that you are putting in at least an hour each day. And then the last tip that you can do while you are waiting to prepare for the APC exam is just do a self-reflection, right? Self-reflection is very important, because you need to know what your strengths are you need to know what your weaknesses are. If it's specific disciplines, that is manageable. If it's professional writing, then that is manageable as well. Because you need to know where you stand. If you got an LC, why did you get that LC? Because I know on the board course that I was on, when I was failing the 3 assessments, I had to submit, a self-reflection sheet explaining, where did I go wrong. That I felt like that was very important because it made me realize my mistakes and taught me that this is what you should not do again. So self-reflection is important so that you can compare your script from your script to a competent response to see, okay, where am I lacking? What can I perfect, right? It's not about being hard on yourself. Don't be hard on yourself because remember, APC is a journey. It has its ups and downs, but it's about grasping the lessons from that self-reflection. You need to be able to pick yourself up from that LC and that BC because there is no ways that SAICA said you are competent in board 1 and you're not going to be competent in board 2. There's a reason why you passed board 1 because now you just have to apply professional judgment. You just have to learn how to, structure your answers the way they want you to, So self-reflection is very important and is essential on our APC journey. So this brings us to the end of our episode, and I hope that the tips that were brought forth into this episode were very helpful and shed some light with regards to what to do from the time you are done with your board course to the time you need to prepare for the APC. And even now, this is applicable to when you are waiting for results on your board course and you don't know what to do with yourself, right? I feel like this is the great time to work on your strategy, to work on, how to just approach the APC exam. So if you have any questions with regards to what was mentioned in the video, or you have any suggestions on what I need to cover in the next video for the content that will help you, then feel free to just leave a comment in the comment section or just pop me an email on apcplug101@gmail.com and I'll be sure to just respond to you. But however, please remember that please rather state your question in the comment section because you never know who else has the same question and who you might be helping with regards to that. So that brings us to the end of our episode, and I hope that you have a wonderful day.